Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a Fastman Spotlight. Exciting to be here today. I'm Brian Lapointe, joined by Alistair Grigg from Fastman. Today, we will be speaking with Samantha from the Canadian Nuclear Laboratories, located in fabulous Chalk River, Ontario, Canada. And for those interested in, the general geography, it's approximately 200 kilometers. For you, us American-speaking folks out there, that's about 100 miles northwest of the capital city of Ottawa. And so this is exciting. The intent of these sessions is really to have a conversation to learn more about specifically today how Samantha at CNL is using the Open Text Content Suite system, and where specifically Fastman, the Fastman tools are having a real high impact, helping them do their job essentially. Also, over the next few months, we're looking forward to hosting more of these sessions and spotlighting successful deployments of Content Suite, really to share best practices, have some networking in this virtual world that we're living in these days, and just and be talking about how folks are using their Content Suite, extended in working in the extended ECM community in general. Okay, so thank you all for joining today. We're going to dive into this thing quickly here. So let me just control my system. Here we go. Talk a little bit about CNL. Moving along here. So it's a little bit about CNL, right? They're government owned, company operated by the Atomic Energy of Canada organization, which abbreviated AECL. We'll say that a few times maybe during the presentation. And Canadian Nuclear Laboratories, will abbreviate that as CNL. And CNL was launched in 2014 to manage and operate the AECL laboratory sites across Canada. Not only the laboratories, but the many sites that they have and ongoing projects. It's worth mentioning CNL has a long history in their, or at least the Atomic Energy Commission has, and has records that go back over 100 years. And during the separation from AECL, they basically selected the Open Text Content Suite as their system of record for all these. So there was a time when they were reorganizing, and that's where Open Text Content Suite came in. Sam, would you like to introduce yourself and maybe explain to the audience your primary use cases for Content Suite? And also, can you share your background and how you've, and even interesting how you've personalized the name of your system? What you're calling your records management system.
Sure. Hi, I'm Sam Toelly, and I work in our information management group. I've worked for AECL/CNL for 8 years. I started at AECL, and then when we were changed into CNL, I continued in my position. So we have approximately 3,800 people that use Content Server. It's one of our main repository. It's the main repository that I work with, and we use it for all sorts of different reasons. We have more than two main purposes, but the two purposes I wanted to talk about today as a company is research. So we are a nuclear research facility. And those individuals, those scientists, use ATOM to look at historical data in order to complete their research, to go forward with experiments, that sort of thing. And we're also focused on environmental remediation. So one of our goals as a company is to help save the environment and to make sure all of the facilities that we create, when we're done with them, the planet goes back to how it was before we even started. Our name for Content Server is ATOM. It stands for a trove of information. The M is a little bit weird because it's the M in the word information, but that's what we picked. In order to pick the name, we had a competition, so people gave a bunch of different options, and ATOM was shortlisted, and then we voted again, and we picked ATOM. It's also a play on words because we are a nuclear research facility and we do play with atoms. So.
I like that. I like that. That's great. Hang on here. Good. So thanks, thanks for that background. I appreciate that. So maybe next up here, as we've kind of progression through here, let's take a look at how you're splitting these atoms right now. There's my little pun, huh? And could maybe take some time to walk us through your open text journey of how you started, what you've done and where you're going and so forth. Would you mind doing that?
So we chose Content Server around 2014. That's the same time when CNL was stood up. So we split from AECL. And at that time, we were using Content Server mostly as a shared area. So it was entirely transitory. It was just for people to do their daily work, not to store any files. At that time, we had our system of record called Track. It was built in-house by engineers, for engineers, and then the rest of the company ended up using it. And as you can imagine, if you don't have an engineering background, it's a little bit confusing sometimes. So they chose Content Server. Content Server is what the government of Canada went with as well. So that was part of the reason for the decision. It wasn't until about 2019 that we actually started using Content Server as a company. So we took everything out of Track, so our homegrown system of record, we took everything out of there and we moved it into Atom, our version of Content Server. And then in 2019, people started using it, so we started putting our daily records in there. Sorry, I was looking at my notes so I don't forget. So there's a few things that are ongoing. One of the things that's ongoing now, one of our use cases for Fastman, is that we have a lot of historical data. So as Brian mentioned, we've been around for a really long time. We have records that date back. I think the oldest one I've seen is 1939, but we have a bunch from the 40s, 60s, 70s, way more from the 70s and onwards. We have all these records. Before my time, but computers were around, but they weren't like heavily used by a bunch of people. So everything is in hard copy. So what we're doing, what we've been doing for the past probably 10, 15 years is taking those hard copies, scanning them and uploading them. So we were uploading them into Track. Since we had a bulk upload tool at Track as well that was built for us. Since we moved into Content Server, we didn't have a bulk upload tool until we bought the one from Fastman, which works great. We also have been working with our procedures. So our procedures were all over the place. We brought a bunch over from Track. They were sitting in kind of just a technical library. We weren't really doing a lot with them. They're there for reference, but that's it. And then we have a bunch of new ones that we've been creating because that's the nature of the business. And starting in 2020, we took all of our procedures and we moved them into one area. So there is one folder that if you work at CNL, you can go to this folder. We've called it My Procedures. You can go in, you can search for your procedure and you can find it. And then our next project that we're going to be looking at, this is actually two. So we're going to be looking at building a technical library for S&T. It's really important for them to be able to find their information quickly and efficiently so that they can do their work and save money. We're doing these projects for other companies. We're charging them to do these projects. So if we can find our information quickly, it's a lot cheaper for the people we're working for. So we're going to be taking all the S&T, science and technology data and moving it into one area. And then we also have a bunch of information that was restricted. So it was restricted in our old system Track. It got moved into Atom and like stayed restricted because we didn't have time to look at it. But now we have the time to look at it. So we're going to take it, we're going to reorganize it, and we're going to unrestrict it as much as possible so it's accessible to the whole company.
Wow, interesting. So it sounds like you have just different types of content that has to be organized in different ways. You have all this historical stuff, bringing stuff in. So you're just always doing updates and just trying to, I guess, essentially optimize, a lot of this historical content so that it can be just easily consumed by your knowledge workers, right? Your information workers. It sounds like it's been a huge task for you. Cool. Let's kind of move along here. So thank you for sharing on that, on your journey, right? As you've, since you've been a Content Suite user for a few years now, I'm sure there's some tips you may have or lessons learned and so forth. Why don't we spend a little bit of time on that lessons learned right now, or best practices? What would you say were some of the top? I kind of have my little slide up here, obviously here to kind of guide us in the audience, but where would you say, you know, some of the best, what you think are the best practices for deploying?
So the first one is keep it simple. And like Brian said, people say that all the time, but it's good to have like actual examples. Keep your CIS model simple, your information governance model, as little folders as possible. Use plain language. Don't try to get fancy with anything because you're working with all sorts of different people across the company. You need to, at least at CNL, you need to be able to reach people who've graduated with high school all the way to people with 3 PhDs. So keep it simple as possible in terms of the language you're doing and the model you're setting up. The other point on the PowerPoint is the metadata. It is tough to pick which metadata you want people to complete. So spend a lot of time on it. Take the time, talk to the company, keep it simple, but you have to balance keeping it simple with also having the required fields there that are going to help people search. So take the time for that, for sure. For training, you're always going to have to do more training than you think you're going to have to do as an IM professional. When you're talking about things and you're talking to other people that are in IM, they get it, right? No problem. It's fine. We're speaking the same language. But when you go out to the rest of the company, it's completely different languages. We use the same words, but they mean different things. So you need to take the time to train people to understand the language, use the language that they're using too, if you can. Make videos, make all sorts of resources that are available for people so that they can use the tool. And proven workflows. But I think maybe this should actually be proven products. So recently we bought some workflows that we're implementing. It's much cheaper, much more efficient. They're proven to work as opposed to building our own. And the other thing I'd recommend is Fastman is a proven product. It works for permissions manager. It works for bulk data management. Highly recommend it. It's proven. So why waste your time doing something else, building your own product when someone's already built something that works?
Yeah, interesting. I actually, the workflow piece is interesting too. It sounds like you started going on that journey, developing your own workflows, and I've seen projects where you start doing the workflows and you're replicating your paper process electronically, and you're not getting the productivity gain that you're expecting from doing that, and then you get a lot of friction with the your users when you try to roll it out. So sometimes having those best practice or those proven workflows for document control or whatever that the workflow process is helpful. Alistair,
Brian,
you're an industry veteran here. I was going to give you the stage if you like.
I've been sitting here quietly listening. It's been actually it's really interesting, Sam. Thanks for this. Actually, you know, the word that I wrote down as I was hearing your description of what you've been doing and what you are doing is journey. And Brian just used it then. I think you might have used it a couple of times too. Oftentimes when we get called in for these sorts of requirements, the sort of things you're doing, we get asked to respond to a project request. You know, so someone's got a project that they need to do. They need to migrate some content, or they need to move some content, or they need to fix up their permissions. But what I'm hearing from you is that is much more about a journey. And an ongoing journey. You know, if we go back to 2014, when the organisation was founded, or CNL came into being, and you chose a platform, and then you had track, and then if you think about the people that you're working with, I mean, I'm sure a lot of the people you're working with are people that have come through that same journey with you, and it's really interesting, isn't it? Because the difference in the mental approach, how you approach things, is right core to success. If you think of it as being something that you're just going to be you are doing over a period of time, and it changes, doesn't it? Because you know what was relevant in 2014, 2015 is no longer relevant necessarily in 2021. There's so many things have changed in the meantime. I don't know if that sort of resonates with you at all. It's that's the message I was hearing from listening to you speak just now.
Yeah, for sure. Our company has gone through a lot of changes. But when we were ACL, our primary focus was really research, and there's since been a change in the company to focus on the research, but also the environmental remediation aspect, which was always there, but there's more of a focus on it now. So we've had to kind of pivot and change in terms of not necessarily how we manage our records, but the priority in the records that we're managing. So
Yeah.
we're looking at the stuff for ERM so that they can, environmental remediation management, sorry, so that they have the records from the facilities that were there, how long they've been there, everything that's happened in those facilities, so they can complete their jobs so that the Earth does go back to where it started.
The Earth goes back to where it started.
Yeah.
That's really,
Or
that's
better,
a nice phrase.
or better. Their goal is better, actually. So.
That's actually really cool, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we put back, we leave it better than we found it.
Yeah, that's the plan.
That's the plan. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you for that. That's some good sharing there. Let's, if we move along, let's take a deeper dive. Let me find my controls, as I always have to here. For this next session right here, we're going to take a closer look at where the specific, we've kind of thrown out some Fastman tools names out there already, but where they're having a high impact for CNL, where they're helping you the most. Deployed at CNL, they actually have 4 different solutions from Fastman. I think we've mentioned Permissions Manager, Bulk Data Manager, we have an extract tool, and then we have the bridge connector and manage move. All of these are kind of in place there. So Sam, my question to you really is, what's your favorite Fastman tool and why?
My favorite Fastman tool is hands down Permissions Manager. And I would say it's because of the type of work I do. My coworker, Amelia, her favorite is probably BDM, Bulk Data Manager, because of the type of work she's doing. But the Permissions Manager, it's amazing how much time it saves us. And that's probably the biggest reason, but it allows us to have an overview of the permissions in a specific folder. We don't have to click into folder, like open 10 different folders to see what's going on. We can do it from a top level view, and managing the permissions that way, it's just so much faster, so much easier to do it. It kind of makes the permissions make more sense to me than doing it the old way. Hopefully OpenText doesn't get upset about that.
No, they won't get upset. But that's actually, Brian, to jump in, that's actually pretty consistent with what we've heard over the years from people who use it in real world. It's really hard for us because as a vendor, we actually don't get to use it in, a lot in the real world scenarios. We go out and do projects with customers, and we run a couple of content server systems ourselves, obviously for various reasons, and we do use it there. So if you download software from Fastman, you download it from a content server system, and all the access is controlled by permissions and so on. And we use Permissions Manager there, but it's just really nice to hear you say that it saves you so much time. And it's easy to use. That's really important. That was the design intent for the product in the first place, way back when.
Yeah,
so that's good.
You met the intent. I think the other thing with these, like I've attended some of these, not just the Fastman, but other people doing like product demos and that sort of thing. And it's always like, oh, okay, whatever. Like you say, it's great, but this is actually the Permissions Manager and the BDM actually live up to what you're saying, to the hype. So I'm not paid by Fastman. Highly recommend it though to people, especially if you have like a very large system with a complex security model. Like Permissions Manager is amazing.
Thank you. It's really cool.
And there it is in the scenario for your training records that we'll dive into. Anyone, when you right click in your function menu, I guess we're in classic view right now, so smart view is similar. But normally, you can go right to permissions for the out of the box way of doing it in Content Suite, but Permissions Manager is just an advanced capability that it's from Fastman, but it just is just directly within the OpenText Content Suite and just lets you do so much more with managing that. So Sam, with that said, I wanted to kind of take a look at a couple of the scenarios and be a little more specific about how permissions manager is essentially saving your bacon, as you said, maybe Canadian bacon. And there's another pun. And so maybe tell us about what you're doing with training records.
So all of our training records are filed in Atom, our version of content server. There's over 565 courses that we have offered at CNL. So CNL is big, right? 3,800 employees. It seems like a lot of courses. It is, I guess, but it makes sense for the different trades that we have. Like we're training people in different trades, different technologies, safety, all of that sort of stuff. So over 565 courses. They're all in one root folder called like training courses. And all of these, most of them have to be restricted because they contain personal information. So it's got my name. It says that I completed this course on this date or I failed it. So we need to protect that information. And also sometimes they have exams with the exam answers. So we're protecting that information. We restrict it so people can't cheat. So they have to be restricted, and different groups need access to different folders. So we have security training. The security group is the only one that wants access to that folder. We have IM training. Everybody in the company can have access to it. It doesn't matter. It's very open. So we've got different permission groups that need to be applied across all of these folders. So what we've done is the root folder has all of those permission groups applied to them. When we're ready to create a new training folder, we create the folder, we go into it using permissions manager, and then we take away all of the groups that don't need to have access. So it takes us, like I made one the other day, it took like 2 minutes. It takes like no time now. It's amazing. I think before, 10 minutes, which still isn't huge, but like it is a big time saving, especially if we need to create a bunch of training folders, because what happens is a department will say, hey, we're going to deliver all of this new training. So then you've got to go in, you've got to create a bunch of folders. So it saves us all sorts of time.
So here we're sharing on the screen. Here's a whole bunch of the folders, and if you had to do it the out of the box way, you would have to go into each one of these and work on them. It sounds like here you can just kind of do it all in bulk and have a good view and have a dashboard view to what you're doing too, to make sure you're doing it right.
Yep.
That's cool. Yeah, you got a lot of groups.
Yeah.
It gets complicated, doesn't it? People think of permissions, and when you see the nice, fresh, out of the box demo of the system, like you said, a demo is one thing, but real world is something else. But it's amazing how complicated permissions or access control gets very quickly in an organization once you start to apply all the different business rules that you have. The privacy issues, and you live in a regulated world, so all the regulations and so on.
Yeah.
It's not easy. And part of the reason, actually, if I can just add, part of the reason that people like content server is because it's got the ability to do this sort of thing. You can control so much, but then you get this highly granular thing it becomes almost just a sea of words, and it just becomes, for some people, it just becomes really, really overwhelming. So they just forget about it. They just stop doing it, and then all of a sudden they don't comply with their obligations. Sorry, I'm sidetracked a little bit, but this is really interesting.
No, this use case, when I first got to look at it and just seeing the complexity of it, was very impressive. And I think you make a good comment too, Alistair, is that people it gets complex. Then they start to forget it. That's when they go back to try and fix it, that's when we get the calls.
Yeah.
Because it turns into a bigger problem, and then it's hard to really understand it. And so I think that's where Permissions Manager helps you from the get-go to design your CIS model, manage to it well. But it also, if you ever need to go back in there and do the rework, when people, or for whatever reason, but it lets you do the rework much more efficiently and confidently.
Sam, do you ever get asked to prove that certain situations are true? That people
Yes.
can't access? You do?
Yeah, we get, there's lots of concern. I've got, not me, but someone's got personnel files. I don't want someone else to see them. Yeah, show me how this is actually working.
Cool.
Yep.
Yep. That's really important.
Yeah.
I hear that all the time too, Alistair. People ask, how can you prove it without writing some kind of report? And then you have to trust the report. Here, you can dynamically just prove it. I assume, Sam, right? You just go into the system and you can show them where the access is.
We use this. The other thing we do is we have we call it a dummy account. And we give it whatever permissions it needs to have, and they can use that dummy account to check to make sure we're telling the truth.
Yeah, that's cool. Actually,
I've heard that. We've heard that too, Alistair, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a really spot on point. And when people start doing the sort of work that you're doing or managing the system like you are, oftentimes when the first round of conversations we have with organizations, they'll say, oh, but I want these reports. They'll say, oh, I need to do a report for this and a report for that. And I said, there's a shift in thinking required to say you actually don't need reports for this. What you actually want to see is what's really in place. So the report's just a representation of it. Then, like you just described, give them a dummy account. Say, you have a look, you prove for yourself. If you find a problem, tell me, I'll fix it.
Yep.
It's really cool. I like that. That's good. Sorry, Brian, I'm taking up a lot of your time.
Oh no, I'm just the MC here today. I appreciate that. But let's move along. There's Adam. I like the logo you guys came up with, not only the name, but the logo. I like seeing the screenshots here. But tell us about scenario number 2. Let's take a look at that one.
So it's somewhat similar. We have all of these transitory working areas. We call them my file shares. No records should be in there. It's just to do daily work with other people. There are hundreds of file shares, and they all have their own set of restrictions. Same idea. The thing with the file shares that I find is that we have a lot more turnover. So we have people, we've set it up that we have controller, contributor, consumer, and the controllers manage access to their file shares on their own. We don't intervene in that at all. And there's turnover in the controllers. So what we have happen is someone new takes over the job. They're like, hey, I need to be a controller for this. And also I need to know everybody who has access to this area. So it's this permissions manager makes it a lot easier to go in, take out the old controller, put the new controller in. We also train them how to do it so they can see a snapshot of their contributors and their consumers, but it makes it easy to go in, take a screenshot of the list of people who have access and email it to them so they know, so they have an idea of what's going on in there.
Cool. Alistair, any thoughts on this use case? Do you see this one? You've been working with a lot of customers for a long time.
Yeah, it's just pretty standard. I'm not trying to talk it down. This is pretty standard stuff, but we'll encourage people to use the add and remove user function. Does that work for you, Sam? Do you ever use that?
Like
the remove and replace.
No, we don't use that.
Oh, we need to show you how to use that. That's really cool. You can simply say, if one person's coming in, another one's going, you can say, take Sam out and put Amelia in, and it'll replace Sam everywhere with Amelia.
Right.
Sorry, we should show you that.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Okay, it might save you even more time.
Oh, that's a good tip. I mean, and that's one of our typical demo scenarios that we see when we're training or presenting to new customers. So that's good. We'll definitely show you that one.
Yeah, but it's a good point though, and I know we've got to keep an eye on time, but it's a really good point that there is standard functionality in products like Permissions Manager that we use all the time, and we repeatedly. You use the filter, you use these add and remove, the edit permissions functions, and so on. And then there are other things that are in the product. What we try and do is, if we're working with customers who have been doing this for a while, and they are not taking advantage of those little bits and pieces, and some of them are actually quite rich functionality, then it's really helpful. These sessions are really helpful to understand where we can help more. So we're not talking about buying more software, or selling more software, or anything else. We're just talking about exposing the other parts of the product that might be helpful to you. But this is good. We should do more of this, Brian. This is good.
So we're okay. I think, yeah, we are getting tight on time here, so let's just move this along. And hey, those, by the way, those are some fantastic examples of how to add, you know, just vastly improved permissions management and reporting to your Atom system. That was great. And I think, as we all know, permissions management in general is the #1 incident type in maintaining the OpenText Content Suite system out there. But next, let's move on. Let's talk about your procedure center workspace that you have, right? What are these? Why are they important? And how do you create them in Atom? Did you need to perform any bulk updating and metadata in Atom on these procedure workspaces?
Yeah, so like I said before, we had all these procedures. They were all over the place. We were having a lot of feedback from employees saying, I can't find my procedures. Can't find my procedure. I don't know what to do. So what we did was we took all the procedures from across Atom and we put it all into one folder so they're easy to search for. What we had to do though is we had the procedures in a folder, and in that folder would also be the supporting records with it, so the review and comment, the approvals, draft files, anything like that. So we had to take the procedure out from that folder and move that folder into another area, and as part of that cleanup, we had to build 800 folders. So Amelia, my coworker, who uses BDM way more than I do, she used the load taxonomy to create 800 folders in 30 minutes. Saved a whole bunch of time because, as you know, doing them one by one, it would take, I don't know, triple that to be able to create them.
Right, and she shared some of her performance metrics right here using this is BDM that she's showing right here on the screenshot. And you're right, it takes just seconds to create the folders. You know, time for all when you have a large amount of it, but you can just let the job run. And it wasn't a programming exercise. It wasn't a custom programming where you had to send it off to someone else to do it for you. She's just able to do it using a tool and get something done in, you know, a few minutes, so that, you know, you can set up set the system up that way. So I think that was a big, when I spoke to her a little while ago, she was so happy about that when she shared that use case.
And the one thing that jumped out, Sam, the one thing that jumped out to me when I saw the screenshot first time was that log files on the left-hand side of the screenshot. Those blue log file entries. That's a list of all the jobs she's run, as you know. And what struck me was just how many jobs she was able to run in a short time. So they might be small, you know, she might only be doing a handful of documents or a handful of folders at a time. But if you look at the timestamps on them, it's 28th of February 2001, and she's running a job every few minutes, and that I think that just says a lot for the product as well. It's not as if she has to spend an hour or two setting everything up. She just goes and click, 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 and runs the job. That's what
She had to do it for thousands of documents. She had to create like thousands of folders. So yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Okay, so let's maybe talk a little bit about scenario number 4. If I remember when we were just consulting with you early on, you had shared with us how you had set up some of the metadata there. So you had to do a lot of work to revamp your categories, right? So
yeah.
what was the backstory? What was the story on that?
So everything that came over from Track, our previous system, had a specific set of like a category attached to it. And then when we started in March 2019 with the new stuff that was coming in, it was a different category. When all the procedures were moved into that one location, we would have had 2 different categories. So what had to happen was the old category from the really old procedures had to be removed and the new category had to be put on there. So Amelia used the tool to help put on the new category, but also to take the metadata off the old category and do a manual translation into the metadata for the new category. It's a category a lot of times. I hope that made sense.
I mean, I think the screen's showing you had this massive category with all kinds of attributes, types of attributes, table lookups, and all kinds of stuff, and you basically concatenated it down to a much more precise, and using the BDM tool to essentially do that too. So it's something complex, and that's the point, keeping it simple for everyone, because that's how it'll be used by everybody too, if you can do that.
And actually, I remember that time, Sam, and the thing that you can just see on that screenshot on the left is that big, huge category you've got there is only one of 3 tabs.
Yes.
There are 2 other tabs that are on that screenshot that aren't shown, whereas on the right-hand side, you've got 1 tab, so 1 category. That's what you're saying, the 3 cats simplified to 1 cat, but you can actually see it in the screenshot if you look carefully. That was a lot of work. That's good.
And that's the typical scenario we see, Alistair, right? People have, they're doing the lift and shift, they're converting over another system. And so they're basically just taking everything and putting it in Content Suite. And then, days, weeks, months later, some other team has to come in and make heads and toes out of it, as they say. But they come in,
Yeah.
they gotta put some structure to it, and how are you going to do that? It could be a big manual task, or or you have to farm that off to a developer, and you got to tell them exactly what to do. Having the tools at your fingertips as an information manager of some kind, it just allows you, because the data, the use case, it allows you to have more power to do it.
So yeah, you're right. So when you're doing a big migration like you were, Sam, from Track to Atom, I guess you can approach it a couple of ways, can't you? You can do it as a big lift and shift and then sort it out once you're in the target system, or you can try and sort it out as you go. That becomes, some people try to do that. That becomes extremely complex, and it just drags the whole process out. So then your whole change management overhead becomes greater. So where do I put my data? Do I put it in the old system, the new system? So the bridge connector and managed move piece for us was a bit of that was something we did with you guys that we actually really see, and more people are using it, and it's an angle to the BDM that we never really addressed until CNL came to us with this problem. And I like it because it means that you can do a lift and shift and get everybody into the new system, and you can decommission your old system if that's what you want to do, and then you can sort it all out, and you can do it section by section, so you don't have to tackle it all in one weekend or 1 month or whatever. You can do it over a period of time, but you've dealt with the change management issue because the old system has gone away, and you can start introduce new business practices and best practice. So, and you can apply your records management and your permissions, all that stuff that's really good in Content Server, which people forget about. It's been around a while, but it's really, really strong part of the system. So I've rubbed it on again, Brian, sorry.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I think, hey, we got one last scenario here to cover. And then, hey, we're giving a little shout out to Amelia, who we've mentioned a few times here, who's a superstar at BDM, right? I love her quote that she gave to us here. Who doesn't need this, right? Because I think she was enriching the metadata on a lot of situations to make it easier to search, right? I think that was one of the big deals. And so she was able to go in there and do a ton of that, right? I think that's where this change attribute use case scenario came from, correct?
Yeah. We found, like, over time, even with our old system, with Track, the same thing was happening. Like, we kind of changed the rules around the metadata. So that's happening. Instead of using this, you're now going to use this, but at the time you're using the correct thing. So she was using it to make sure all the metadata was the same to the rules of today. And there's also, like, human error, right? So we have a lot of our humans putting things in, they make all sorts of mistakes. So she went through and she corrected all the mistakes that she could find. And using BDM, like we haven't talked about it, there is that Excel sheet, and you can drag and drop. You can you can set it at the top level, have it apply to everything. Like, it just makes things so much faster. So yeah.
Yeah, because I think her team was manually, data entering a lot of this stuff, trying to clean it up. And so you're right, she could go in, if somebody spelled one word a certain way, even though it means the same, I'm sure she saw discrepancies like that. So she could have a column and at the top put in the right keyword she wants, the way she wanted it spelled, and it would just populate like through an Excel spreadsheet, so that you could do like hundreds or thousands of records the same way, so you have that consistency. So you have clean, and that makes the searches work easier and so forth. So and it's fast, as you can see. The performance is fast, right? So that's great. So I think we are there. Thank you so much, right? Thank you so much for spending time with us today. It was very valuable insights, I think, that we're sharing with the community here. I know that the Fastman technical delivery team really enjoyed working with both Amelia, yourself, and the team over there, and your use of metadata and content suite definitely presented interesting challenges to our teams. Like we were showing, we're kind of joking a little bit about it, but that was some massive category and attributes that we had to be able to consume, work with, and help you improve. So we saw some interesting new scenarios there that we use to improve the product too, and that's kind of the history. That's how a lot of the Fastman solutions go. We keep improving them with every new customer. The success, when we look at the success, was really a result, I would say, of the combined team working together, to kind of understand each other's challenges. And not only the challenges, but really your specific data structure, and then solution, come up with a way to solution and innovative transformation with you using the tools. So well done, and please keep us posted on your journey as we see. It sounds like you're just in the first, you're gonna keep this journey moving forward, and you're doing some real interesting things. And again, we really appreciate you taking the time to share your stories, expertise with the overall, content suite community. This is a well-received presentation to the community, and I know it will resonate with the many Fastman permission manager customers out there who are nodding their heads, going, "Yep, with the same." They know what it does, and they have a similar perspective on getting the maximum performance out of the content suite system, while reducing the burden on you to managing everything. So well done, and thank you for sharing time with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Sam.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a
You got
pleasure.
it.
We've really enjoyed it. Thank you, and good luck with the future.
Thanks.
It's exciting. You've got a lot of work ahead of you yet still, so keep going. It's great.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks a lot.